Well, hello and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Summer. I make spiritual content around raising our collective consciousness as a species, sharing my personal insights and journey, as well as reflecting on teachings from the Ascended Masters. I am really excited about this video. I've been wanting to make it for a while since the event happened, which is recapping the pretty pivotal and transformative New Year's webinar for this year, 2025. We're starting a new 12-year cycle according to the masters that we're going to get into. Before we do that, I just wanted to say that so the way that things start out is the Ascended Masters will present a topic to the messenger Kim, and he will let us know. And it usually happens right before the event. We don't really know what is going to be said other than we know about this topic. We don't know which Ascended Masters are going to speak. So the topic of this one was acceleration. And so we could expect that the Chohans, the Ascended Masters, the Elohim residing over that ray, were most likely going to present themselves to say something in regards to this topic and for us as a collective and what our next steps are. And so without further ado, Wishmasters spoke and what they said, the talking points. So let's get into it. It probably wasn't a shock to most people that Serapis Bey was the one to open this entire webinar and conference on this topic because he is Chohan of the fourth ray. And so I'm going to pull certain quotes that he mentioned, his dictation that I felt like stood out, but this is not an exhaustive list. This is just what I chose to talk about in this particular video. So he mentions that life, there was a lot of theme around life being about progression or regression. And you can't have both. So you're either progressing or regressing. And it reflects the law of perpetual movement. And he even mentions in his dictation the second law of thermodynamics that you must either accelerate or decelerate. There is no standing still in the world of form, which is really interesting because to use the analogy of a steam locomotive needing the fuel to maintain progress, and spiritual acceleration requires that kind of effort. You can't just continue to stay stuck and idle and think that you're actually progressing and moving forward just because you're doing the same outer things that you've been promised is going to get you somewhere in life and your salvation. The key to the spiritual path and your evolution in consciousness is that necessary work that's required for you to continue to transcend yourself on a regular basis. And in order to do that, he says, when the conscious you steps outside of the four lower bodies, it experiences pure awareness. That is akin to the Christ consciousness. The Christ mind is defined to maintain unity between creator and its creation. So the Christ mind and being able to step out into your pure awareness, that is the I am presence. And, in this world, it can be a bit more of a challenge to be an active participant in life, but be in the world, but not of it. And he says in this really interesting quote, in the Aquarian age, we intend to give humankind more and more teachings from our level because the gap is decreasing between us and the Ascended Masters because we are becoming more like them. And that's the whole point of self-transcendence, is to ascend out of the earthly form and retire your meat suit, so to speak. And if you've been watching my content long enough, you know about how I've talked even in recent videos with Kim Michaels, who has brought forth the terminology of avatars, which is when you realize what an avatar is, they've been talked about for a long time in our culture, especially if you've ever heard of star seeds or indigo children or rainbow children or crystal children. They're all the same. And so essentially, as we do our work to transcend ourselves and to raise our consciousness, we become closer and closer to our ascended brother and sisters, basically, who have done this work before us. And so that as we transcend ourselves, we're able to receive and handle more and more light and more concepts that is bypassing the intellectual mind, and it's going straight into our four lower bodies. And to the core of our being, which is our I am presence in the conscious you. And as that happens, the planet is raised and the consciousness is raised. And so it's like a spiritual hierarchy and a yoke. And so when you think about a yoke, the ascended realm, our ascended brothers and sisters, the ascended host, the team of the ascended beings are pulling up on us in the ascended realm, and we are pulling up. The top 10% of the population with the highest level of consciousness are pulling up on the 80%, which are then, you could say, pulling up on the bottom 10%, but actually what's happening is the bottom 10%, which is a part of the power elite, and I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but there's a reason for all of this, is pulling down on the population. So the world that we live in is built around the consciousness of the fallen beings, because they're the ones that control most of everything on this planet, the so-called elite. And so they're pulling down and we're pulling up, and we have reached a critical mass. And that's what the next master is going to talk about, which is Archangel Gabriel. This was like a major icebreaker in the entire webinar. And for me, because it was my first one I could be at live, because it was done in Central European time. So I was asleep for this first dictation from Serapis Bey. And so my first dictation was hearing this one from Archangel Gabriel, which was a big one, which is him announcing this coming new 12-year cycle. And he goes on to talk about what the 12-year cycle means and how this wasn't his first time announcing something this pivotal. He was the archangel that delivered the news to Mary that she had it within her to birth a Christed child. And so he'll talk about that. I'll let him speak for it, not I. Again, he starts his entire lecture with, this New Year's 2025 marks a turning point in the recent history of Earth, because the Christ light has been increased to a critical mass whereby I can announce the birth of the Christ on Earth. But here's the thing. These next 12 years will be a cycle where more and more people have this opportunity to give birth to the Christ within themselves. But do not expect this to be a period without its challenges, but it is an extraordinary opportunity for the earth to be accelerated so that the golden age can manifest much faster. Saint Germain's golden age, if you've not heard about that. So he goes on to talk about how he appeared to Mary and announced to her that way back when, 2,000 years ago, if you remember, he appeared to Mary and announced to her that she had found favor with God and that she had the potential to give birth to a Christed child. What most of you have not really considered is that it was not a given. She had free will. So although Archangel Gabriel and the Ascended Host and the Ascended Masters are announcing that we've hit a critical mass with the Christ consciousness so that an extreme surge of light can be delivered onto the planet, we all have free will to choose whether we're going to allow that Christ within us be born into this world. And so he continues and says, she started objecting when he delivered this news to her, and that she could have refused to give birth to such a special child, knowing it would be a larger responsibility than she had imagined taking on. And just because I announced the birth of Christ on earth does not mean it is actually going to happen to the maximum degree. But what I am announcing is that Earth has reached a point where the 10,000 beings in embodiment need to accept that the Christ is being born within them. This was about 38 minutes, this entire dictation, and it was jam-packed, powerful. I'm still getting goosebumps, like recounting that moment when he said that. So he goes on and says, it's really not thy will, but our will that you are born, submitting to your own divine plan before you took this embodiment. Nothing is new. The fact that you are receiving this information, that you are hearing this, is a testament to the fact that you are being reminded and reawakened to the reality of what you wrote into your plan of your life before you came in here, and you wrote it with the Ascended Masters. And it's about surrendering to that, I believe. There's a lot of psychology that has to be resolved in the process of transcending oneself, because what are you transcending? All that is not you, all that you've acquired, all the traumas and all the beliefs and all the ideas and the emotions and the closet worths of clothes that you've been wearing that has to be returned back. The wardrobe that you have on has to be returned back because you cannot ascend from this earth with the things of this earth still attached to your being, into your consciousness. And so it's about surrendering to the truth of who you are and what you came here for, and letting things die inside of you that need to die. And he says, if you think it was easy for Mother Mary to give birth to Jesus and raise him to the age of 12, think again. She had many challenges, many more than she ever explained. And the first 12 years after my Annunciation to Mother Mary were very challenging. And 12 years from now is 2036. And it says you need to stay positive, fixing your goal on the target, not the immediate conditions. And you'll kind of see this thread, I think, pop up through the recounting of what the masters have said of certain points. And it's this thread of being willing to let go of the familiarity of what you feel is comfortable, the feeling of familiarity and comfortability, and surrendering to something that is asking you to be more than what you're comfortable with, and that nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. Anything that stays the same is actually degenerating, and thanks to the second law of thermodynamics, is declining and deteriorating. And in general, on this earth, nothing lasts. Everything is deteriorating. And he wraps it up with saying that, Christ that is not expressed in helping others is not actually Christhood at all. You can't just sit on your mountaintop thinking that you're being the Christ. There are certain beings in embodiment, very few, that are holding the balance, that are out in the Himalayas and just meditating all the time. Those are very, very few people that have been trained, and it's in their life plan. And the majority of people on this planet, the vast majority, like 99%, that is not their path. They're meant to be in this world to integrate, assimilate into society, to do the spiritual work, and to express it in real time in action and interact with the world and have those interactions be something that raises the whole, and it being like a very natural expression, and it being a balance. Christ is balance. And you are building your Christhood over the next 12 years if you choose to allow that to be born within you. And this was, like I said, this is a really amazing dictation for me. And it got me really acquainted at the time to Archangel Gabriel, because I'm pretty new to the teachings. I've only been in them for just over a year. And so these masters and these beings, it's taken me time to continue to get to know them and their energy. And I really liked it because for the first time, I was decreeing Archangel Gabriel in the webinar. And the refrain I really loved, and I'm just going to say it here, which is, Gabriel Archangel of this we are sure. Gabriel Archangel, Christ light is the cure. Gabriel Archangel, intention so pure. Gabriel Archangel, in you we're secure. And I really like that last bit, because if you're anything like me, I could go into a whole slew of things of what has given me that temporary feeling of security, which has actually been a fallacy, which is depending on my outer world being a certain way in order to give me that sense of security and fulfillment. And yes, food, water, shelter is a given for us as beings on this planet to feel secure. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than just the basics of how we can get caught up in the illusion of safety and security. So moving right along to the hierarch of the age of Aquarius himself, Saint Germain begins by saying, if we are to manifest the beginning stages of the golden age within a reasonable time frame, then we need to do something to accelerate the cycles. But clearly, there are still so many people on earth that are trapped in the school of hard knocks that the only way they are going to learn is that the knocks become harder. Have you experienced this personally? because I don't know about you, but when I found the teachings, I was a mess and deeply out of balance. And I was deeply entrenched in the school of hard knocks and had to learn some really hard lessons that I don't think are inevitable, but maybe they are. Being in schoolroom earth, that's just kind of a given. You take in, you drink in the duality consciousness and let it take over your entire being. And when you do that, you inevitably have to experience the school of hard knocks. And so with that will be turbulence. There will be turbulence. There will be challenge again, challenge, turbulence, unease. And, this acceleration isn't meant as a punishment, but as an opportunity to rise beyond outdated patterns and embrace the golden age mindset. That's what we have to realize. Everything is working out for us in our favor. Even when the dark forces come to test us and make us feel burdened, it's showing us where we're still not free within our own psyche. It's showing us where we are still enslaved to this world. And so everything really is a gift. You really only have everything to be grateful for, because everything is working for you to rise up and to spiral up in consciousness and go beyond this world of form. He then says that the descent of the Christ light is the beginning of an opportunity for people to regain their free will if they accept Christ and seek to use this frame of reference of the Christ light to evaluate their beliefs, their worldview, their mental images. Then they can free themselves from the lies and the illusions of the fallen beings and thereby recapture a greater freedom of will. And, this is a profound reminder that true free will can only exist when we liberate ourselves from deception. And people don't realize that, yes, we have free will, but the majority of the people on the planet, even though we have free will, they're being manipulated to such an extent from the fallen beings, the minor elite of people that are running and ruling most of what happens on this planet, and that are in positions of power and have infiltrated all areas of society, that the majority of people don't actually have free will because they are being manipulated to such an extent by these forces. And when you connect with the Christ light, whether through meditation, prayer, contemplation, this can help break through those illusions so that you can restore your personal sovereignty and actually be a free, sovereign individual on planet Earth. You don't have to do drugs. You don't have to escape. You don't have to run off to Timbuktu in order to get your sovereignty and your freedom. You have it within yourself, in your consciousness. It's inside of you. And so we mentioned earlier that Earth is a schoolroom, if you weren't painfully aware at this point. He goes and says about that the purpose of what is going on Earth right now is to raise people's awareness. If we look at what it will take to manifest a golden age on Earth, what is the primary lesson that people need to learn? Well, let us look at Earth in its present state. Step back from the specifics. What is the biggest question that most people have on Earth? Why is life on Earth so difficult? Everyone at some point in their lives, no matter what their consciousness level is at, they ask this question. It's like, why is life so hard? That is probably the most universal question that people ask everywhere. And so when we choose to detach from the drama of the world and from our lives and see, again, it's an opportunity. It's to help me raise my consciousness to see a different and higher perspective of what is happening and what I'm experiencing and why I'm experiencing it. Why am I experiencing this? Why is this my experience? Even just asking that question without an intent to get an answer from a specific lens you ask and you open that up, I know that was at least the case for me. It's just like, okay, clearly this is happening for a reason. I'm experiencing this for a reason. I'm open to seeing it from a new perspective and a new way of being. And I think objectivity is probably king at this point when we look and step back, is because the objectivity gives us this balance and gives us this neutrality of like, okay, this is happening for a reason. And he says, when you ask this question and look at what is actually happening, you can come to the conclusion that the mess created in human affairs is not created by God, not created by a process of evolution, not created by the general population, but a very small elite of people who do not have what most people have, which is some respect for the value of human life, some respect for the rights of other people. The world stage of suffering and poverty and all the major issues that we see in this world, they stem from a deliberate and intentional act of a small power elite that have no regard for human life, that only want what they want for themselves and are deliberately seeking to inflict harm and to keep the population in a certain level of consciousness, serving only them and their needs. Very narcissistic. Right. Then he goes on to say that this is the realization that needs to break through in the next 12-year cycle here, where a critical mass of people, in fact, a majority of the people, begin to realize and consciously acknowledge this. And therefore, they begin to decide that we will no longer allow our societies to be led and controlled by this group of people. And this really, by taking a stand in such a way, he's calling forth a revolution. Like a revolutionary change is in order as the consciousness is raised and people become aware of like, oh, this whole world, this whole system that we're in right now is only here to serve a very few amount of people. Why does only a couple of people on this world, for example, have more wealth than anyone ever could even imagine having? Like the more wealth than anyone can ever do anything with. And this is leading to physical change, because once we all understand it, inevitable action, the physical is the last thing to manifest. So the four lower bodies are the identity, the mental, the emotional, and the physical. And once something starts at the identity, it makes its way down into the physical. And so once we accept this as a reality in our identity bodies and all of our four lower bodies, it will be manifest on earth through tangible actions. And he says, for thousands of years, the fallen beings in and out of embodiment on earth have managed to hide themselves from the people. And this cannot be sustained over the next 12 years because, again, as the light is increasing, they actually physically cannot stand to be in embodiment. So as the light increases, as our awareness increases, the darkness will vanish. This doesn't mean that the majority of the people will start talking about fallen beings, or even that they will necessarily recognize the Sin and Master teachings or Sin and Masters in general, but they will start recognizing that the murder and mayhem on earth is caused by a small group of people who are not behaving like human beings, but as some other kind of beings, self-centered, narcissistic, inhuman beings. They look like you and me, but they are not like you and me. And then it shifts into, he begins to talk about moving toward a well-being society, which you see in a lot of more democratic nations like Denmark and, Scandinavian countries, where they put the people first, and it's evident in how their government is ran. Like you don't see homeless people on the streets of Denmark, for example. There's universal health care. And he says, beyond the physical welfare societies, beyond the physical affluence that you see in some modern nations, it is necessary to shift into a well-being society where society is focused on the psychological welfare of the people. Like, how is your mental doing? Why are people and their well-being not the most important thing? Why is profit more important than people? Who said that it was more important than people? Who built society around profit over people? See, this is like when you really look into the infrastructure of how the world is built, it is everything we interface with the world through a narcissistic lens because it was built by narcissistic beings that, again, look like you and me or not like you and me. They're fallen beings. And so everything in the world emphasizes what they feel like is important: power, prestige, affluence, influence, money, privilege. You only care about making a lot of money because you were told that that's what you needed, and you were indoctrinated to believe that everything revolves around profit over people. And so to close it out, he emphasized, the power of speaking out, like what I'm doing right now through these teachings. And he says, there are people out there who want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear it from you. And then recognize more and more people are tired of the slick television personalities and the experts. They want to listen to authentic people. They want to listen to authentic people who are daring to be themselves. Welcome to my channel. It's nice to have you here. It's quite cozy. Okay, we've got quite a bit more to get through. And again, I may not touch on everything because this is just coming from my perspective and what I feel inspired to do. And so I'm really excited that you're here. If you haven't taken a break and gotten a sip of water yet, now is your chance. Otherwise, we're going to keep trekking forward to the one and only Elohim Astrea, Elohim of the fourth ray of acceleration. So Astrea starts out and talking about introducing what Elohims are to us as human beings on this earth. So the archangels have the task of reducing the light from the spiritual realm into the four levels of matter. And then the Elohim take that light and they release it or magnify it into the matter realm. And this collaboration shapes not only individual energy fields, but also the collective and physical world that we live in and that we interface with, the matter light. So with this release of light, again, this 12-year cycle that will have its challenges and profound opportunities will have its effect on living organisms. So you may see things like an increase in disease or die-offs of entire species, population decline. The light will flush out the impurities and imbalances that are within us to rise us higher. And if you're a spiritual person, this may not be new to you, like hearing these prophecies. And not only that, but even just the idea, if you're a spiritual person, there's a likelihood that you are familiar with detox symptoms through your physical body and going through upgrades in your system. And it may accompany like a deep sickness or flu or a virus. I don't know about you, but I experienced that 4 times this past year of 2024 where I thought I was going to die. The first time it happened, the second time it was the same thing, but different. I still felt like I was going to die, but not to the extreme as the first time. And then the third time it came, it was like, okay, this is the same thing, but I'm graduating from it. And then the next time it was like, okay, I think I've worked through this. I've worked through something. I've gone to a next level, I think. And so, and it's this realization that you have to actually make room to grow. You cannot take your past and who you have been with you into the future. You have to let the things that are no longer relevant to your being die to make space for the new to come in to your vessel, because you can only hold so much. You let what's dead and deteriorating, be where it is, buried in the ground. So with this release of light and all of the changes happening, she says you will also see in nature more erratic weather patterns. And this is a temporary thing. This is a temporary mechanism. This time of turbulence is temporary. And you're going to see a lot of mayhem, a lot of propaganda around this, and a lot of blame and a lot of drama being stirred up about why this is happening. Like for me, this isn't new to hear this. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, where we were just hit with the most cataclysmic hurricane. It was so erratic. The fact that the hurricane got stronger on land, that's not what hurricanes do. Hurricanes don't increase their intensity when you hit land, especially when the mountains are supposed to break it up. No. But I digress. So just to, again, to reiterate, to look beyond the controversial explanations and realize that this is a part of the process of the earth upgrading, of us as a people upgrading. This is the inevitable outcome. When the light is released, things that are no longer relevant, that are no longer in support of that light manifesting on the planet have to go, have to be released, have to be transformed and transmuted into something else. She says there will be an increase in earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the severity depends on people's willingness to transcend themselves. And so it seems to me the more that we can accept, the easier the transition will be. And the more resistance and the more that we hold on, it will be like pulling teeth. She says also, the increase of light will raise the vibration and accelerate the vibration of matter itself, which will be easier for people to disassociate their minds from the physical body. But I think more maybe what she was referring to, I mean, there's so many layers to what the Ascended Masters say. There's so many layers of consciousness within those words for so many different people to tune into. That's what I love about listening to these messages, because you listen to it one time and it's one message, and then you listen to it again, same words, it's a different message depending on where I'm tuned into in consciousness. And so being able to detach themselves from certain physical conditions, being able to have, again, miracle healings perhaps, and it will be easier for people to accept that my psychological issues could not possibly be the result of my childhood in this one lifetime. So this is where it's getting to the bigger macro picture, that, again, what we're told about our lives in the history of this earth is not what it actually is. It's told by the power elite through the lens of what they want us to hear in a lot of instances. And perhaps we have been here for more than one life, and perhaps our psychology isn't just from this one lifetime. I know mine isn't. There are memories and experiences that plug in to my psychology that just have nothing to do with this current lifetime. And, with, again, going back to the healing aspect and the physical body and the changes that we will see in healing in this next 12 years will be opportunities for growth and business. Actually, she says, you are the forerunners among the spiritual people who could very well see a business opportunity here. Combine the need to make a living with helping other people and also clearing karma with other people. And of course, as we know, the topic of advancements in science and technology, I just have this feeling that we're going to see things that we've never seen in our lifetimes being brought forth in a very short period of time, exponential growth. And with that, she says, imagine that energy was free. What kind of a boom in the economy would you see if energy was free? Free energy. We're not far from this. We're not far from this at all. In fact, it's already here. We've already accepted that as a reality and a possibility. And it's only a matter of time as the consciousness raises of the collective that these technologies will be released into the public and be a part of our reality and our world, intrinsically a part of it, in fact. She says, there will be a mass acceleration or mass extinction. This will provoke you to look at your reaction to such a statement. In the next 12 years, you will see a separation in consciousness, divide. Some will go up and some will go down. There is no limit to acceleration. It is the most joyful experience you can have when you choose to accelerate your whole being up and moving forward. Oh my God, wrapping up. Okay. Now enter Mother Mary, the Divine Mother, the Ascended Master that holds the office of Divine Mother for the entire planet. We start this off by saying, truly, this is a turning point that I have been looking forward to for a long time, hoping that a critical mass of people would bring about this turning point by raising their consciousness, looking into their own psychology, and using some form of spiritual teaching and technique to raise their consciousness. And here we are. She says, thereby contributing to raising the collective consciousness to that critical mass, that tipping point where this light could be released. You know, she says the words tipping point and how a relatively small number of people, of spiritually dedicated people, can catalyze global change by holding the balance for other people. By you doing your work as a spiritual person, you are holding the balance and creating deep change. All of your suffering that you've gone through, all of the selves that you've released over your lifetime and over lifetimes, it's all contributed to right now. Congratulations. I'm not going to pat you on the back necessarily in your ego, but it hasn't been for nothing. All of this has been for something, leading you to this point and helping and get that next step, because it's always just about that next step. You don't have to have like the full thing self-actualized and you ascend tomorrow. That's not what we're talking about. It's the incremental step by step that you get here, that you get to your destination, your goal. Rome wasn't built in a day. So this is where the psychological clock is introduced to me. You know, I came into the Ascended Master teachings through this dispensation through Kim Michaels, where he does not really talk, but this kind of prompted me to go back into the previous dispensation with Elizabeth Clare Prophet in the Summit Lighthouse. She says, what I desire to release now is not really a continuation of the cosmic clock teachings. It is not meant to replace the cosmic clock teachings for those who may still find those valuable, but it is perhaps a more practical teaching for dealing with psychology. And so what you can do with this clock, this we might call the psychological clock, is you can use it to see certain cycles in your personal life. This isn't a continuation of the cosmic clock teachings, and it's not meant to replace the clock teachings for those who still may find those valuable, because it's all about, like, if you find it valuable, great. If it's serving you at your current level of consciousness, great. So this is a new spiritual tool that can be used to help you at a psychological level for what you might be dealing with. And it's distinct yet complementary to the cosmic clock teachings from the Summit Lighthouse. And in that, you're basically mapping out your life's journey through the rays. She mentions that the first ray is the 12 o'clock line and goes all the way to the 12th ray, and then you continue. She continues to expound upon this, basically emphasizing the secret rays that make up the consciousness, because if you just look at it, it's just like, oh, it's just lines on a clock, and you just follow the lines. What's the clock made out of? There's a thing holding it together. There's the centerpiece that's moving the dial around. There's the white that the letters are behind. And so I'm not going to speak too much about this because, again, I am not well versed in it as of right. But what I will say is that, she mentions that this is the beginning of a 12-year cycle and that we are starting the first ray right now in this year, 2025. So we're at that 12 o'clock line. So as a collective, we are working through the qualities of the first ray. So perversions of power, which is will. The first ray is will and power. And so perversions of will and power and the God qualities of will and power. And moving on, she goes and says, you can therefore take advantage of that by making calls to the masters of the first ray. There has to be a will to be creative. And creativity starts with thinking beyond your current mental box and questioning your mental box and being experimental. And creativity starts with thinking beyond your current mental box, being willing to see something beyond what you can currently see in a way that you've never seen it. Questioning your mental box and reaching beyond it. And breaking through that mental rigidity, expanding upon this and saying, Mother Mary, saying this says, I have observed how people use the cosmic clock. For some, it became a very rigid way of looking at it, which I really resonate because this is just kind of another tool like astrology. You become so rigid and you become imprisoned by your own rigidity of way of looking at something, your own mental cage. Some even attempted to plot the hours of the day on the cosmic clock. Others lost interest because it became too much for them. What I hope is that you find a more balanced approach, allowing the psychological clock to work as a tool for resolving psychology, which was its original intention, but that was a certain level of consciousness when it was originally given to us in the teachings. So using this, again, to be used for resolving your psychology. It's a psychological tool. Use it well. So she then goes on to expand upon this thought that a lot of us are having as people on Earth. And it's this thought of, we, the vast majority of people on Earth, want to build a better life and a better society for ourselves and our children. I know I do as a mother. And she says, why don't we have it? Speaking for us, as us. Why don't we have it? Because there is, again, a small minority of people who are aggressively working against it. I have every intention to do my job as a spiritual being on earth with all the authority in the world to call forth all the power beyond this world and radiate out into the collective consciousness. This is the awakening that we're all really wanting and hoping for. And she closes us off with the unconditional love of the mother. She says, I hope you can feel that love, for it is the ultimate transformation. And what is transformation? Is it not acceleration? And so, again, thanks for being with me and sticking with me this far. As we start to wrap up, we have two more masters. We have Master Moore, who is, again, Chohan of the first ray of power and will. And to close us out will be the Buddha, Gautama Buddha. And a lot of what they say is really to drive home this message of what we have just experienced going through this entire conference and the things that were said and the light that was dispensed through us for those of us who were there. Master Moore says that, the Creator built into the Christ consciousness is the drive to be more. The Creator built that drive within us. It's innate. It's innately a part of who we are. And ultimately, this drive to be more, of course, leads you to reach the Creator consciousness in which you can fully appreciate Christ and experience your Creator. But at the more immediate level, when a new life stream starts out with that point-like sense of self, it is experienced as a drive to be more. True creativity is to create something that is more than what was there before. And how do you create something that is more? A co-creator clearly experiences that it didn't create the environment it is in. It was created by larger minds. So in the beginning, the co-creator sees itself as an observer, as an experiencer. And it can take some time for a new co-creator to consider itself as a co-creator who has the ability to create something new. And so this trap of the status quo in this world, he starts to talk about this a lot, the status quo and how much of a trap it is and the role of creativity and really giving us permission as spiritual people to just kind of go out there guns a-blazing or in being as creative as we can and out there as we can to an extent. He says, what happens is that those who deny their creativity cannot avoid observing that other people in their environment are being creative. They have to come up with explanations in their minds for why they are not being creative. The second law of thermodynamics is activated when there is no self-transcendence. Things start to break down when you do not transcend yourself. It seeks to maintain transcendence with this. And when there is no transcendence, it breaks down society to awaken people to the need for self-transcendence. Look at all of the major empires of the world that seemed unstoppable. And then all of a sudden they're turned to dust. They're just turned to dust. Rome. This was a conquering empire. The Roman Empire was a conquering empire. And because it couldn't transcend itself, it was wiped away. And so he goes on to talk about why we're really here as avatars and why fallen beings are here and the emergence of that, because he starts to illustrate how Earth kind of came to be in the different epochs that it's been a part of. There was a certain group of people that realized their creative abilities and started to create things, and there were civilizations being created, and there was other people that didn't want to use their creative powers and made excuses for why, and there was some stagnation that started to happen. When the self-destructive spiral was created, the Ascended Masters decided to allow two groups of life streams to embody here: the fallen beings and the avatar. And so the initiations that humankind, and there's way more on this on Kim's channel, which I can link below, or you can just type in Kim Michaels and go into how the world was created playlist. Just type it in. Or you can go to ascendedmasterlight.com and find it there. Or find the book, The Power of Self. And so the initiations that humankind will be facing in this year, 2025, are precisely the initiation of, will people make the shift to see themselves as creative beings? Or will they continue to deny their built-in creativity and seek to maintain the status quo? Are you trying to maintain the status quo? I know I'm not. I'm about had enough. And again, experimentation is the source of creativity. You have to be willing to experiment and to try new things and not being afraid of doing something wrong or right. You just try and you learn and you try and you experiment and you're willing to grow beyond your current state by that experimentation. And when he talks about those groups of people that I mentioned, because I'm giving the cliff notes of this talk and it's really worth it to either listen, find the dictation on the website, morepublished.com, or to go into Ascended Master Light and type in or find, dictations by the masters and select Master More. And it should be the most recent dictation. And he goes into the different epochs and the generations basically on a more cosmic scale, a grander scale than just like one lifetime, for example. We're talking about millions of years ago, potentially. And the evolution of what it was for the original inhabitants of Earth to dare to be creative. So let's step back just a minute because he mentions it here, which I think is really important, which is there being an inexhaustible supply of energy in higher realms just waiting to be expressed in the material realm. Again, we have the authority, they have all the power. Where do we get our power? From the ascended realm. Psychic energy, you can have as much as you want as long as you call for it. And Kim's video released about what is psychic energy. It's propositioned as a question, and it's one of my most favorite videos that he's ever done because it goes into kind of the quantum mechanics behind all of this, because this isn't some woo-woo stuff. Quantum physics and science is proving the ascended realm and the energy that comes from the ascended realm, basically, and so I felt like that was a good way to transition into the next and last ascended master. And thank you for being with me thus far, because this has been such an awesome experience to be able to recount this with you in this format, in this way. And so, as you can imagine with the Buddha, it's a more contemplative, meditative kind of style and dictation. And Kim, when he's giving the messages of Gautama, he inevitably goes into the Buddha position, the Buddha fold, the leg fold. And so this was a really beautiful one to end it on, very peaceful. And he starts by making us visualize, or giving us the opportunity to visualize, this great big tree with a thick, strong trunk. And at the foot of the tree is a sitting Buddha figure. And in front of the tree is a large body of water, like the ocean, and the water being turbulent. And the archangels radiate light into the filigree of the tree, spreading it into the water, where they illuminate the water. And as the light spreads, the waves subside, and gradually the water becomes like a mirror, calm and peaceful. And going back to being an avatar, he mentions that when you come here, it's a great shock. So you can akin it to that turbulence in the water. It's a great shock to come here. Mainly because the birth trauma and the atrocities that you're exposed to by the fallen beings that they subject you to when you come here. Because in their mind, how dare you? How dare you come here and try to make a difference? This is my planet. I'm taking dominion. These are my slaves. This is my harvest. How dare you be the Christ of being on earth? And not only that, but the original inhabitants, likely don't want the change. They didn't necessarily want the change. A lot of them. And so they either ignored you or aggressively wanted to silence you. And when this happened to us, this original birth trauma, these wounds, these traumas, he says, you decided to either shut down or greatly reduce your creativity. Again, all driving back to creative will, because you doubted that creativity is the solution. You doubted yourself. You doubted that creativity. You doubted that experimentation. Because that's what fear does. Fear stifles creativity. And this is really your opportunity to examine and release the subconscious selves that justify holding on to that. They justify holding back because of that fear. I know I have. That's been such a big thing for me to work through, that fear and doubt of myself and who I am. Because it's that willingness to experiment and to not be afraid that will move us forward as a people. as a species, as a collective. And why not? He says, why not unleash the full creativity in the time that you have left? What do you have to lose? This is just Earth we're talking about. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose by being all that you are and trying and just trying. Try it out, experiment, give it a shot. And if you ever feel like you can't access that, the power of stilling the mind and going into the inner stillness, and how it's actually like a wellspring that you can tap into at any moment. You can tap into that. The masters, the ascended hosts, that consciousness, that energy, that river of life flowing, you can tap into it at any time by just pausing and being still and being silent and listening. There's so much noise out there in the world, there's so much static even in our minds. And what is it like to really be silent? And it's a necessary step for co-creating with the ascended masters, for co-creating with your creator. And honestly, the only way, he says, to maintain balance in the turbulence is through stillness. And lastly, using this to revolutionize your creativity. This is like a revolutionary tool and next step. He says your creativity does not spring from a disturbed mind, but from a mind that is able to go into silence. This was a powerful station of light. And these are powerful tools, powerful insights that we can use as a people, as spiritual beings on this earth, to help this planet transition with more ease for us. We can't control how other people choose to handle situations in life and the circumstances that they will be presented. But listening to these words from the masters, again, we become conduits, because it's more than just the words, it's the energy and the vibration attached to it. And this, we become like radio towers transmitting it into the collective for other people to get that opportunity. It's kind of like the 100 monkey theory. If you've ever heard of that, a group of monkeys on one island learned how to bust open a coconut in some way. And then all of a sudden, monkeys on a completely different other island, completely separated from those monkeys, do the same thing, because we're sharing psychic energy. It's a collective consciousness. We're a part of a hive mind, whether we want to accept it or not, to varying degrees. We feel each other. We're a part of each other. The human species, we're a web. And so as we do this work, we weave more light into the web. And we do what we're here as our authority and our God-given right to do, which is to bring forth a higher viewpoint, a higher vantage point, a more ascended level of consciousness. And perhaps if it's in your divine plan to bring forth Saint Germain's golden, it's your choice to choose if you want to be a part of that. You may decide to ascend and not look back, or you may decide that you have qualified, that you want to continue to come and be back, be part of this. May very well be a part of your plans. And again, it's your free will and your choice. It's not a choice that you make up here. Again, none of this can be done in some kind of sterile, prescriptive way. This is not a prescription. None of this is a prescription. You choose to do it. This is just, again, an opportunity to feel into how it affects your four lower bodies and your chakras, and to see what next steps are being asked of you to transcend, to let it integrate fully more who you are meant to be in this life, all of who you are meant to be. And so with that, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.